Something that's been really fun reading through Masechta Berachos is encountering a whole lot of stuff that's part of the practice that I've known as part of the practice since I was a lad, um, and finding the source for it, finding like this is where it comes from. So here on page 60, we have the morning blessings laid out, and there's this beautiful little set of blessings um, that one makes as he goes through the morning ritual. So when he hears the crow of a rooster, he says, "Blessed are you who give gave the heart understanding to distinguish between day and night." I'm saying "lesachvi vino." Sachvi is a word for heart and also a word for rooster, I think. Sachvi goes to the heart. Because there is somewhere in some places um, the rooster is called Sachvi. Sachvi meaning heart, um, which is the instrument of understanding in to the classical mind, and the rooster is called that because it has the talent of discerning daybreak. The rooster understands when the day is coming. Um, so that's the first blessing. Yeah, when you hear a rooster, you make this blessing. Blessed are you who gave the rooster understanding to distinguish between day and night. Sachvi isn't the normal word we use for heart. That's a lev. Um, Also, when he opens his eyes, he says, "Blessed are you who gives sight to the blind." When he straightens and sits up, "Blessed are you who releases the bound." When he gets dressed, he says, "Blessed are you who clothes the naked." When he stands up, he should say, "Blessed are you who straightens the bent." When he lights upon the floor, so when he gets out of bed and puts his feet on the floor, he says, "Blessed are you who spreads out the earth upon the waters." That's a great one, isn't it? Like you get out of bed and well, there's solid ground here to support you. It's not because, of course, in Jewish cosmology, there was just the water, and then there were the upper waters and lower waters. The separation was still all the water, and then God has to bring the land out of the water, or lay the land upon the water like a sort of a tablecloth, if you will. And that's very, very nifty. So you're sort of reminded of your gratitude for that. That we're not living in some submerged dystopian future. But that is an interesting one, Like here's a fun little question to ask your next uh, rabbinic panel. If climate change gets to the point where all the cities of the world are flooded, if all the glaciers melt and just the whole planet is submerged in water, do we still make this blessing? There's a question for your next rabbinic panel. If you ask that, do let me know how it goes. Um, Four. When he walks, he says, "Blessed are you who firms man's footsteps." That's how they translate it. Baruch hamechin mitzadei gaveh. I think mechin, I've seen it elsewhere as prepared. Mechina, it's a place of preparation. Um, yeah, blessed are you who prepares man's footsteps. Is very elegant, very like old world poetic fatalistic. Like this idea that as you start walking, you make this blessing. Blessed are you who's prepared these footsteps. So it's like I'm just walking through this sort of predetermined dance of life that God has already laid out for me, and I don't know about it yet, but He does. Very interesting, very very contemplative. Um, he puts on his shoes. He says, blessed are you who has provided me my every need." Notably, we don't say this blessing on Yom Kippur on Tisha B'av because we don't wear leather shoes on these days. So that's another interesting thing, right? The idea that the shoes are the locus for what is considered every need. Blessed are you, God, who provided with every need. You can make it on anything, or anything that's an essential part of your day, but it's the shoes that get it. Elsewhere, the Gemara actually says that if a man has, well, what is it? A man should sell the the roof tiles of his home in order to afford shoes. The shoes are very important, and they're the going instrument in some sense. It's like while you still have your shoes, there's still possibility. That's an interesting one there. When he fastens his belt, should say, "Blessed are you who girds Israel with might." Here's an interesting one. So they have a note here from Abudraham, one of the commentators, and he says on this blessing, when you fasten your belt, you say, "Blessed are you who girds Israel with might." He says, "A warrior hangs his weapons upon his belt. Thus, the belt signifies might." I have seen a cute little infographic on on the internet somewhere that seems to indicate differently, and the impression I got from that was that everyone in the ancient world was walking around in robes, and when it's time to get into a fight, you sort of take your robes and you sort of draw them under your loins, and you like sort of a giant diaper, and then you tie them up together, and so they don't in your way when they don't impede the flexibility of your legs when it's time to fight. And that's where the phrase "girding up your loins" comes from. And it's something that's done with the belt, right? You gather all your robes up and then you tie the belt on. And that's what you do when I guess you're about to be involved in like strenuous physical labor or battle. So far be it from me to disagree with the great Abudraham. I don't know who it is, but he's quoted here a couple of times. But it does seem to me to be that's where that blessing comes from. Okay. When he spreads a cloth upon his head, he should say, "Blessed are you who crowns Israel with splendor." Tosfos says, or a hat or other head covering. Rambam in Mishneh Torah, he says, when a man puts on his turban, he says, "Blessed are you who crowns Israel with splendor." When he wraps himself with tzitzis, he says, "Blessed are you who sanctified us his commandments and has commanded us to wrap ourselves in tzitzis," and so on. So there are some blessings that goes into tefillin for a while, discussing the possibilities of one blessing or two for tefillin. But this is interesting. There's a there's a Rambam in Mishneh Torah where he says some people have the practice not to do all this in this way as it's described, bit by bit, activity by activity, but rather they gather in the synagogue and then they just recite the entire list of them in one go. And Rambam says, I think quite clearly, that this practice is an error. It's not the right way to do things. However, it does seem to be the way that a lot of people, maybe most people, do things today. So despite Rambam's protestations, that does seem to be the mainstream, which, in my humble and in no way legitimate in this regard, I suppose, opinion, is a bit of a disappointment. It's a bit of a shame, because I think the idea of going through a morning ritual and making these blessings on each thing as it comes up is very cool. The one other thing I will say on this is it's still confusing to me exactly how you're supposed to make all of these blessings, given the complexities of the laws on ritual purity. Because a bunch of these, like you're making while you're still in bed, you're sitting up, you're putting your feet on the floor. Like at this point, you still haven't washed your hands, you still haven't abluted, you haven't been to the bathroom yet. You can't be invoking the name of God before you've been to the bathroom. And I think most people, when you wake up in the morning, you need to go to the bathroom. So it's a question. Provided me with my every need, but you put on your shoes. You can't mention God's name when you're touching your shoes, I think. Anyway, some questions. Many brachos.